So a lot of those rules apply to online meetings. A lot of those rules apply to meetings that might take place one-to-one or in an environment where people gather for a meeting. But there are some specific online meeting etiquettes that I'd like to share with you. These are things that I've observed, things that I've picked up through meetings. And I think executing some of these is very important. But again, my approach to this is just to show it to people and encourage them to do it. And by way of a quick example, when I was a lot younger and knew a lot less, I was in a restaurant and I didn't fully understand the etiquette of crossing your knife and plate until someone pointed out to me that if I didn't cross my knife and plate, the waiter wouldn't lift any of the plates on the table and that they were effectively waiting for me. Well, that's an item of etiquette. I didn't much appreciate the way they told me that, which was in front of everyone else, but I learned very quickly the do's and the don'ts to do it. So all I'd like to do is to share with you some online meeting etiquette that's very useful to communicate to staff and colleagues. The first piece of etiquette and do's and don'ts is that I say to people, form the online team. Who's in charge? Who's the facilitator? Who's the note taker? Not in charge per se, but in charge of the meeting. Who's facilitating the meeting? Who's going to look after technical to make sure everybody's comfortable, everybody's tuned in, everybody's on or off mute, everybody's cameras on or off, and then the timekeeper who's going to count down and say this is the time remaining. And then the online Yoda. The online Yoda, for any of you that aren't familiar with Star Wars, is the person who will sit back and say, look, I'm the person who will say, look, there's a couple of things we need to do to keep order, to keep things moving along. Again, we have to be supportive of people coming on to this format, because for many people it's a new way of doing business or conducting their affairs. The other thing I like to do is to collaborate. I like to sit down with people in advance and just say, how should we do these meetings? Let's agree some rules of engagement for the meeting with your team. Timings, location, agenda, format, audio only, audio or video. How are we going to conduct these meetings? And let's get some basic rules of engagement. And then let's apply some coaching. And the way I favor to do the coaching is schedule an interactive online meeting coaching session and say, let's just try and deploy this stuff. Use these lists of rules, of do's and don'ts to apply to people and say, can we broadly agree as a team that this is how we're going to do our meetings internally? But also, if you're talking about how you're going to conduct yourself with dealing with external customers, dealing with people outside your organization, what are the rules of engagement with customers? In terms of getting to that point, I'm a great fan of saying we should have short meetings and they should be specific, i.e. let's do little, let's do it often. Keep the meetings short, keep them focused and very much task driven. Again, I often say to people, could we arrive 10 minutes early and simply sort out the connections, any technical problems that we might have? Some of you may or may not have had the experience of people joining online meetings and they arrive late, but they have a coffee in their hand. And they'll often say, I'm terribly sorry, I got delayed, I was doing something. And I often think to myself internally, yeah, okay. So what I often do is I'll often say, arrive early, sort out the connection, give yourself a breath, and then let's have a chat. And I often, when I'm conducting an online meeting, say to people, let's all check in. Let's have the check-in conversation and a water cooler talk for a few minutes before you call the meeting to order. And I'll quite often let people get 10, 15 minutes to gather together, say hello. And any new entrants to the meeting, I will always introduce them, say who they are and what they're there for. So when I kick the meeting off, I'll often introduce the meeting, remind people what the agenda is, what the time frame is, what we're getting to, introduce any session participants that people may or may not be aware of. And this is particularly important in a selling environment, that I'll often say, just as it's good etiquette when you have a one-to-one meeting, I'll often say, may I do some introductions first? And you start to introduce people. And again, I constantly remind people about the agenda and some of the rules regarding muting and distractions. I often ask people to come prepared. For example, you heard me mentioning the RAG report and task notes. I often say to people, please don't read your task notes as you sit down. Let the chair know of any absences or any actions that you haven't achieved so that we can avoid any uncomfortableness at the meeting. So if you have your task notes done, great, but I'll probably contact you and nudge you and say, can I give you a hand with anything? Come prepared. The other thing I often say to people is don't Don't interrupt colleagues or customers or the person you're with while they're speaking, because first of all, many of these products, the tech tools for online or virtual meetings, they don't allow more than one people to speak at a time. And when they do allow more than one people to speak, if there's more than one person speaking, you tend to hear no one. So you may not be heard. So part of the etiquette that I often use is, and again, some people say to me, is that not rather draconian? But I say, no, but a method that's very effective is if you just raise your hand, what you're saying to the chair is, I'd like to say something. The other thing that I see that I know frustrates a lot of people, particularly if you're in a sales environment or you're talking externally to a supplier or a customer or someone important, is that don't work on other tasks. And I know that's a challenge, and I know that that's difficult because a lot of people are having to multitask, is that in terms of the received message at the other end, people can see that you're not concentrating on the meeting. For example, you can see people looking down, checking on their phones are going off, emails are pinging. And again, I fully understand the challenges that that represents, but what I often say is try and avoid that if you can, because you can have a shorter and a more focused meeting as a result. Do put your mobile on silent if you can throughout the meeting. Your message will normally wait an hour. Don't allow other colleagues to interrupt the meeting. I've seen this in a scenario where maybe talking to a customer, maybe making a pitch, maybe talking to a supplier, maybe talking to the bank, whatever, and people will come in and simply engage you in a conversation. And to be fair to them, they didn't know. They saw you with your headset on, but they maybe didn't know you were having a meeting. And some of you may work in open plan areas, some of you may be working from home where the interruptions are physically unavoidable. Some people are at home doing homeschooling, and some people are maybe working in an environment where it's shared. So the new reality is that we have to be cognizant of that. However, if you can, it's good to tell people that you would prefer not to be interrupted. If you have a space where you can go to where you won't be interrupted, fine. Another method that I've used in the past when I'm working in a shared office environment where I'm having meetings is to simply put a red flag or a simple note saying, meeting in progress, talk to you soon. The other point that I often say to people is try and stick to the allocated time. I was at a Zoom meeting which went on for 2 hours, and quite frankly, we lost a lot of the people at the meeting because the meeting, first of all, it was late in starting. Secondly, the agenda wasn't clear. Thirdly, the meeting ran over and other people had other things to do. And a lot of you maybe have experience with this, and people saying, listen, I have to go to another Zoom now that I've scheduled. And you might say, well, I need to talk to you. And you go, I know, but I need to go. So what I quite often do is try and stick to the allocated time and try and leave some time for summarizing tasks, actions, and then circulate the tasks if you can. Because again, everybody's the need to support each other. The other thing that I do, and again, this may just reflect my approach to life and to people, is that I don't call out negative behavior at an online meeting. But what I will do is I'll take it offside, I'll make a note, and I'll use it as a learning point with the person. You may or may not record some of your online meetings, but what I'll quite often do is take an opportunity to say to someone, could I get 10 or 15 minutes? I would never say to someone, could you hang on, I want to show you some stuff. But what I will do is I'll say, could I get 5 or 10 minutes on your own, just have a quick one-to-one, I want to give you some feedback regarding the meetings. And most people are generally okay. So that's a quick run through at speed of planning for and delivering online meetings. You have your technology plan in place. You're implementing your dedicated space if possible. If not, we're making the best of it. We've adopted new practices and procedures, both with colleagues, with customers, with people that we interact with, and we're executing that plan as we go now. And that's fantastic. And many of you are already doing a lot of this under difficult circumstances, and I commend you.